Every 4 years, the World Cup descends on the planet like a weather event. Offices grind to a halt. Grown adults cry in public without apology. An entire nation once stopped functioning because a ball went wide of a post. Streets empty during matches. Productivity collapses across continents. People who have not thought about football since the last tournament suddenly have opinions. Flags and a personal stake in the result of a game being played by strangers in a country they have probably never visited. And somewhere in the middle of all this collective fever, there you are. Completely unbothered. Maybe slightly annoyed that your social media feed has been buried under jerseys and penalty shootout takes for 3 weeks straight. Maybe genuinely puzzled by the intensity of it all. Maybe you tried to care, you sat down, you watched a match, you waited for the feeling to arrive, and it just never did. You have been told you are weird for this, perhaps cold. Perhaps you have had someone look at you with genuine concern, as if your disinterest in a football tournament is a medical symptom worth investigating. Here is the thing, the psychology actually points the other way. Not caring about the World Cup is not a gap in your emotional development. It is not antisocial, unpatriotic, or evidence of any deficiency. It is a specific, explainable, neurologically grounded response to a very particular kind of cultural pressure. Let's go, Part 1. What is actually happening in the brain of a fan before we talk about why you do not care? We need to understand precisely why everyone else does. Because the World Cup does not produce that level of emotional intensity by accident. It exploits specific features of human psychology with extraordinary efficiency. The first mechanism is what Robert Cialdini documented in 1976, BIRGing. Basking in reflected glory. Cialdini observed that university students were significantly more likely to wear their school's branded clothing the morning after their team won than after they lost. They had not played, coached, or even watched in many cases. But proximity to the win felt like ownership of it. What he was documenting was how desperately people use group membership to manage self-esteem. When the team wins, we won. When they lose, they played poorly. The ego quietly sidesteps the wreckage. The World Cup amplifies this to a national scale. Not just a team, your country, your flag, your collective identity made physical by 11 strangers. When national identity is something you feel strongly, and simply, this is extraordinarily powerful. The second mechanism is intermittent reinforcement. Neuroscientists describe the unpredictability of sporting outcomes as a core feature of behavioral compulsion. The reward circuitry fires not when something good happens, but in anticipation of whether it will. You do not know if the next spin pays. Your brain stays locked in because the resolution keeps not arriving. This is structurally the same mechanism that makes slot machines so difficult to walk away from. The near miss, the stoppage time goal, the penalty that could go either way. These are not incidental features. They are the precise psychological architecture that keeps people watching. The third mechanism is collective effervescence, Emile Durkheim's term for the feeling that arises when large numbers of people share intense emotion simultaneously. The energy of a crowd, the electricity of a moment shared with strangers who are, in that moment, not strangers. This is neurologically measurable. Synchronized emotional experience produces real physiological changes, heart rate. Cortisol, the sense of personal boundaries becoming permeable. The World Cup, watched by billions at once, is one of the most efficient collective effervescence machines ever constructed. Part 2, why none of this hooks you, here is where it gets interesting. For all three of those mechanisms to work, one thing has to be present first. You have to care about the outcome, not as a rational decision, but at the level of the nervous system, a prior attachment that makes the uncertainty feel like stakes. For people who do not care about the World Cup, that attachment was never formed. And without it, the psychology runs completely differently. The uncertainty of the match does not feel compelling. It feels like watching a coin flip for 90 minutes. You do not know which side will land, but you have no investment in either, so the not knowing is not exciting. It is just waiting. BIRGing requires prior identification with the group. if your connection to national identity is ambiguous. The invitation to feel personally victorious because someone from your country kicked a ball into a net simply does not compute. And collective effervescence is not universally accessible. It requires a willingness to be swept up, to temporarily merge with the crowd. Some people find this transcendent, others find it uncomfortable or alienating. This is not a character flaw. It is a difference in how the nervous system processes high-intensity, shared emotional experience. Part 3. The national identity problem. Let's talk about the specific strangeness of the World Cup compared to regular club football. With a club team, attachment makes psychological sense. You chose the team, or your family did. There is a local connection, a personal history. The identification has roots. The World Cup asks something different. It asks you to feel intense personal investment in a team based entirely on where you happen to be born. You did not choose your country. You had no say in the matter. And yet every 4 years the cultural script says, this team represents you. Their victory is your victory. For people who have complicated relationships with national identity, who grew up between cultures, or who simply do not organize their sense of self around nationality, this framing is not just unconvincing. It is actively strange. You are supposed to feel personally victorious because a man from the same country kicked a ball into a net. You share a passport. The emotional logic does not follow. Psychologists note that the strength of this national emotional connection varies enormously between individuals based on upbringing, immigration history, and the degree to which national belonging has been positive or negative in one's life. Neither response, deep connection, or indifference is wrong. They are outputs of different life histories. Part 4. The early formation problem here is the factor that almost nobody discusses when this question comes up. Sports fandom, real, deep, identity-level fandom, is almost always formed in childhood. Think about what creates a genuine football obsessive. It is almost never someone who watched a match as an adult and decided to care. It is the father who stayed up to watch the tournament with them when they were 8. The specific memory of a goal scored at exactly the right moment, loaded with the emotional weight of who was in the room when it happened. The jersey worn to school, the playground arguments, the sense of belonging that came from knowing the names, the history, the narrative. These are not just memories. They are formative emotional encodings, the kind the brain stores with particular intensity during the developmental years when identity is being constructed. The sport becomes associated with safety, belonging, family, and the particular warmth of being a child who is part of something larger. For children who did not have those experiences, whose households were not organized around football, the neural encoding simply did not occur. By adulthood, it is largely too late to build that encoding from scratch. You can learn the rules, follow the narratives, appreciate the athleticism intellectually. But the visceral, automatic, identity-level investment that defines real fandom requires a developmental window that has already closed. The people most baffled by your indifference are people who cannot imagine not having had those early experiences. Their passion feels so fundamental that its absence in others is genuinely hard to comprehend. But their passion was not inevitable. It was formed under specific conditions. At a specific time, you just were not in those conditions. Part 5. What you are doing instead here is what gets missed in every conversation about people who do not care about the World Cup. The tribal instinct, the need to belong to something, the drive toward collective experience, these do not disappear in people who do not follow sport. They go somewhere else. The people not watching the World Cup are doing something with that same psychological energy. Some are in communities organized around music, creative work, intellectual pursuits, or causes. Some find collective effervescence in concerts, political movements, or online communities built around shared passion. The psychological need the World Cup satisfies is universal. The vehicle is not. Non-sports people did not opt out of tribalism. They refused a specific vehicle for it. And when you examine that vehicle honestly, You are being asked to feel profound personal investment in the outcome of a contest between strangers, organized around borders you did not draw, representing identities you did not choose, whose results have no material consequence for your actual life. That the majority finds this compelling is remarkable. That some people do not is equally remarkable and equally worth understanding. Part 6. The social pressure dimension. The World Cup creates a specific kind of social pressure that regular football does not. It is a once every 4 years event. It does not have the background hum of a regular season you can quietly ignore. It arrives as a cultural moment, something happening to everyone simultaneously, and you are visibly opting out. Have you watched the match? No. Do you follow football? Not really. Do you not care at all? Not particularly. And then the look, the slight recalibration. This pressure does not come from malice. It comes from the genuine difficulty people have imagining a mind that does not respond the way theirs does. The fan is not interrogating you. They are encountering evidence that their most reliable source of emotional intensity is not universally accessible. That is unsettling to discover. The interrogation is about their confusion, not your deficiency. Outro. You do not care about the World Cup. And you have probably spent a significant portion of your life being mildly apologetic about that fact. Or slightly defensive. Or just quietly baffled by how much it seems to matter to everyone around you. Here is what the psychology says. The mechanisms that make the World Cup emotionally overwhelming for billions of people. BIRGing. Intermittent reinforcement, collective effervescence. National identity fusion are real and powerful. They exploit genuine features of human psychology. The intensity of the fans is not irrational. It is the predictable output of specific psychological machinery operating at full capacity. You are someone in whom that machinery, for reasons of history, neurology, or developmental timing, simply did not fully engage. That is not a deficiency, it is a difference. The need for passion, for belonging, for collective experience, for something to care about this much, that is in you. It has always been in you. You have just been finding it in different rooms. And those rooms are no less real, no less valid, and no less worth being in than any stadium. If this video finally gave you language for something you have been feeling every World Cup for years, share it with someone who needed to hear it. Leave a comment below. What do you actually care about this much? I read every single one. Subscribe for new psychology content every week. Until next time your game is out there, you are probably already playing it.